Hey guys, thanks for joining me again. So in this video, I'm going to answer all your questions. I threw it out there onto Instagram and YouTube and asked what you wanted to know. So in this video, I'm going to answer all your questions. Let's get stuck in. If you're new to the channel, welcome guys. If you're not new, welcome back. So like I said, today we're going to talk about what you wanted to know. All the questions that you asked me. It could have been camera stuff to do with me, anything in general. I'll put a post up on my Instagram, and if you're not following me on my Instagram, jump over and give us a follow so you can stay updated with what's going on. And also, I'll put a post out on YouTube asking what you wanted to know. So if you're not subscribed to the channel, jump down and give us a subscribe. Hit the bell icon so you don't miss any of the content. So I think we better just get stuck in. Nice and comfy, got a cool bevy, and let's get stuck right into it. So the first question here is from a man who needs no introduction. A lot of you guys will be familiar with his work, Mr. Richard Taddy from Nightscape Images. He commented and says, "You produce some awesome Nightscape tracked panoramas." Thanks, mate. "Why do you like to concentrate on these over single frames, as these take a fair while to take, and do you ever get more than one image in a night?" Absolutely, they take a long time to create. But I think the reason why I enjoy taking such huge tracked panoramas goes right back to when I first started taking Nightscape images. And I would take one single frame and I just love what I'd seen, and just standing there and looking at the whole Milky Way arch, I just think, oh, I want to capture more of it. So, you know, I'd shoot a little bit more and a little bit wider and a little bit wider, and next thing you know, I had a full arch of the Milky Way, and I just absolutely loved it. And from there, as I was editing those images, I would zoom in and, you know, you couldn't see a lot of great detail. So that's when things progressed, and, you know, wanting to use longer focal lengths so I had more resolution so I could zoom right in and see all that cool detail. And that obviously meant using a tracking mount. So things just snowballed, and that's sort of how I went down the road of shooting tracked panoramas, and it's a really hard thing to get out of. Now, it's really cool in one way, but I would say it's also a hindrance in another, because sometimes I can't see the forest for the trees. I go to a location and in my mind I'm already thinking, you know, big panorama, but there might be some more intimate, you know, compositions that could be had that I might miss because, you know, I've already got my mind made up that I'm going to shoot a big panorama. So it's a good and a bad thing. And as far as taking more than one image in one night, I don't tend to, but it's definitely something this season that I'm going to concentrate more on, especially those new moon nights where I can shoot, you know, my big panorama, and once that's done, because there's no moon all night, I can then, you know, change my attention to more intimate stuff, or just try and get a bit more creative. So that's the plan for this year, is to get a bit more creative and not just be focused so much on those big panoramas. So the next question we got here is from Lexia. I'm going to be hopeless with these names. I apologise now. I'm terrible. It says, "Love your photos, man." Thank you, appreciate that. "My question is quite basic but somewhat important with this hobby that requires staying up all night. How do you find time to shoot Astro with juggling in your job, family and exercise?" Yeah, that's a really, you know, a big question that I guess a lot of people would understand and struggle with trying to balance everything out. And I'm lucky in a few regards. One, that I've got a family who 100% support what I do, and they also love coming along and experiencing what I'm experiencing. So if you haven't seen my video about the car I built to go traveling and shoot Astro images, in that video you'll see that I've set it up so that I can take my family with me, and that helps juggle, you know, that family life a little bit more. So I can take the family along, spend time with them during the day, and then at night I can shoot my Astro images. And I'm just really lucky with the job I work. So I work a roster which allows me to have a lot of time off. So it's an even time roster that works 12-hour shifts. So, you know, I work a week on and a week off, which gives me more than enough time to go and shoot, you know, videos, all my Astro images, whatever I want to do. So I'm really lucky in those regards. you know, put those two things together, I'm really lucky, you know, for this hobby, it works out really well for me. So that's how I manage it. So the next question we got here from Tony is, hey mate, can you explain what is an Astro modified camera, what is done and what effect it has on the images? Absolutely. So Astro modification has just blown up, you know, in the last few years. Essentially what it is we're changing what the camera sees. So straight out of the factory, your camera's got filters that are in front of the sensor that allow the camera to see what the human eye sees. And that makes sense, because who would want to take a photo and look at it and say, well, that's not what I seen when I was standing there. So the filters in front of the camera block out all the UV light, and they block out anything past the visual spectrum of light. Now, when you Astro modify it, they pull the standard filter out and they'll put a different filter in that allows the camera to see more light. So the sensors themselves can see a lot more light, but the manufacturers filter them so that they limit the range. And there's a couple of different types. One is the hydrogen alpha modification, which the camera I'm shooting on now is hydrogen alpha modified. So it just pushes that range so you can see more into the reds. So hydrogen alpha, it's in abundance in the universe, and it glows at a very specific wavelength of light that standard cameras just don't see. So the modification allows that to happen. And the other modification is full spectrum, which means they take all the filters out from in front of the sensor and they just put a glass sheet back in front of the sensor. Now what that means is your camera can see all the way from UV all the way up into the infrared. And that allows you to then put your own filters in front of the camera and, you know, choose what you want the camera to see, whether you want to shoot only in infrared, only in visible light, only in hydrogen alpha. It's a really versatile way for those people who are going down the deep rabbit hole of astrophotography. What it means for images is the white balance is pretty messed up. So my images straight out of camera are a lot redder than they would normally be. And it means post-production is a little bit more difficult to try and get something that looks normal, because it's a lot redder than what our eyes normally see. Now, would I recommend a hydrogen alpha or full spectrum modified camera? Not unless you've got a second camera. So I've got dedicated Astro cameras, and that way I don't need to shoot on those if I don't want to. If I want to go and shoot daytime stuff, I can just shoot on a normal camera that's got a normal filter in it and it's got a normal white balance. So if you've got multiple cameras and you want to use one as a dedicated Astro camera, go nuts. So the next question we got here is from Caleb White. Where did you get your A7R2 Astro modified? Do you have infrared light leak issues that require dark frames to subtract? Thanks, Caleb. So my camera was modified in Melbourne by a company called Camera Clinic, and they done a great job. And I don't have any issues with infrared light leaks with my camera, because my camera, my A7R2, is only hydrogen alpha modified. So the filter that they put in front of it still blocks infrared light and don't have any issues with bleed onto the sensor. It's only more sensitive in that 656 nanometer range. So there's no issues with any sort of infrared light leaks. And the next question, Carl Reed. How do you polar align with the Move Shoot Move? So I've recently been playing around with the Move Shoot Move, as you would know, and because it's a tracker and it needs to be polar aligned, it means that polar alignment is no different to any other tracker on the market. So it's the same as my Star Adventurer. Just look through the polar scope and polar align that way. I'm thinking about doing a video on how I polar align in the Southern Hemisphere, and if that's something you'd be interested in, drop it in the comments below. So we got one here from Sandu G. I'm so sorry with these names. In terms of your summer panoramas, you've extracted the hydrogen alpha like no others, sometimes even with no stacking. A single exposure of yours has so much detail, despite the quality of your dark skies. Could you please go into how you extract the nebulosity while reducing stars? Okay, so like you've touched on there, dark skies is a massive part of it. Any sort of light pollution is just going to completely wipe out any of that faint detail. So dark skies is an absolute must, and having the ability to shoot really long exposures at a really low ISO means the images themselves are really clean, and that way I can really stretch that data when it's in post-production to pull out all that detail. If I was shooting at a lot higher ISOs and a lot shorter shutter speeds, the images themselves would be a lot noisier, and the signal to noise ratio would be a lot worse. So if I stretched those images, you wouldn't bring out all that, you know, beautiful nebulosity, you'd just bring out noise. So for me, the biggest things is dark skies, really long exposures, and low ISOs. So, you know, there's no really big secret. That's just how I do it. And if you do those things, your raw files are really clean and you can really stretch that data and pull it out. And then as far as reducing stars, I was using StarNet++ to reduce the stars, so to remove the stars, so I could edit them separately. But excuse me, recently I've switched over and I've been using Star Exterminator, and that program works really well. And then that goes into the next question from Comlev. Hi, how do you reduce the stars? So for me, like I said, Star Exterminator will remove the stars, and then you can edit your image separately from the stars, and then you can put the stars back, and when you put them back a little bit smaller. And the next one here from Profond Photo, what's a really good low light camera that can be used well for other types of photography as well? Oh dear, this might upset a few people. The easy answer is any camera built in the last 5 years, probably a little bit more, can do what you want it to do. I'm gonna say it. Sony cameras have proven to be incredible low light cameras. So the A7S series is absolutely incredible. A7 III, incredible. So for all you other brands out there, you other brand fanboys, I'm sorry I went there. But yeah, so the A7S, A7 III, I shoot on the A7R2, which is not the best for single images, being such a high megapixel count. But when you mix that with a tracking mount, it's fine. And to be fair, if you mixed any modern camera with a tracking mount and you have the ability to shoot really long exposures, any camera would be suffice. Hi John, how do you use an Astro modified camera? How do you get the H-alpha red coloration to pop that much? Are you considering doing a post-processing tutorial anytime soon? So that one there was from RS Photolog. So how do you use an Astro modified camera? It's just the same as any other camera you would buy. It's just that it's a little bit more sensitive to hydrogen alpha in that 656 nanometer range, so the red. So all your images are just a little bit more sensitive to red. Now, some of you would be aware that camera manufacturers have brought these out standard before. So Canon had their EOS RA, so A for Astro modified. And I'm pretty sure Nikon did one years and years ago, but drop it in the comments. I might be confused with another one. So they're essentially the same to use as any other ones. And the next part of that question sort of goes back to a previous question where, how do I get the reds and hydrogen alpha to pop so much? And like I said before, really long exposures, really dark sky, and give yourself a really clean image to be able to really pull that detail out of in post-production. You know, the old saying, in, garbage out, could not be more true when you're trying to pull out hydrogen alpha detail. And as far as a post-production tutorial is concerned, if there's interest there, I'm more than happy to make that. So if that's what would interest you, drop it in the comments below. So the next one here from Rob Upsall, how do you take the multi-row panorama without the gear for nodal points? I noticed in your setup, I just have the basics. So yeah, I've never seen a need to worry about using a nodal rail or any of those sort of things. I've never had an issue with images stitching weird or any sort of artifacts. So I honestly haven't worried about it. It's just one more thing to carry and it just makes your gear bigger. So I've never had the need for it, so that's why I don't use it. So until I have any issues with stitching or anything weird happening with panorama stitching, I just won't use it. So the next question here from Wonders of the Night Sky. What is your post-process in the field / post-process for tracking and blending shots with complicated foreground subject like trees? Trees are a nightmare. I have nightmares about trees. So there's a couple of things you can do. If you've got a tree right in your foreground, you can shoot your foreground first, move to the other side of that tree and go again. So you won't have a tree in your foreground when you go to blend them together. That's a really easy way to do it. As far as complicated trees on a horizon line go, if they're going to be close enough that you see them, unfortunately, you've just got to mask them out, and it just sucks. There's no easy way to say it. The only thing I could say is try and pick a composition that gets you back from the trees a little bit, so that they're not so prominent in your final image. That critical masking is you know, a massive important thing. But if they need to be there, we've just got to mask them out. And I do it manually, so I'll just go in and manually mask all the trees, and it just sucks. It just plain sucks. So I've got a comment here from Whiskey and Astrophotography, and that name's awesome. It should be Beer and Astrophotography. I've been considering modifying a Sony a7R II for Astro, but I've read that modifying is not recommended because of internal infrared reflection issues. Have you encountered any issues with your camera? So this goes back to the other question. No, I haven't had any issues because my camera is only hydrogen alpha modified. It's not full spectrum modified. If I full spectrum modified the A7R II, you definitely would have infrared leaks, but because mine is only hydrogen alpha modified, there's no infrared leaks at all. And we got one here from M. Kyle Photography. Have you made a comparison between your camera unmodified and modified? It would be cool to see the difference in the raw images. Yeah, that's a really cool idea. So that's definitely could be a video for the future. If that's what you want to see, jump in the comments below and let me know. If you want to see a comparison between raw files or even edited files from a dead stock camera to a modified camera, from the same tripod, same portion of sky, the whole lot. If you want to see that, let me know below. So we got one here from MT07.SI. John, I know you are very happy with your setup, but how would your dream setup look like? Different tracker, camera and lenses. Whew. Yeah, that's a hard one. I don't know. I think, yeah, like I said, I'm really happy with the setup I've got. And when you find something that works really well, it's hard to, you know, try and push away. One thing that's always sort of, you know, been a tickle in the back of my mind is setting up an Astro, a dedicated Astro camera with a camera lens and shoot that way. There's obviously massive pros and cons to each, but that would be cool to see the difference, so that you can actually have a cooled, you know, a cooled sensor, so that noise becomes, you know, not an issue at all. And as far as my tracker goes, I'm married to that thing. It's awesome. It's just a tank. It's a beast. You can do whatever you want with it. So I don't know that tracker will get replaced, or even if there's a better tracker out there for me at the moment, I don't know that there is. So we've got another one here from Carl Reed. So what lighting I use? So I actually don't use any lighting at all. I have in the past. I've played around with, you know, a bit of light painting here and there, and I've played around with low level lighting, but, you know, I don't know that I've done any sort of lighting in the past 12 months, probably more, to be honest with you. All I do is take really, really long exposures of the foreground, and if I can, I'll shoot those foregrounds in the blue hour and, you know, make sure I get a really, really clean foreground, and that gives me the ability to then modify the highlights and shadows to make, you know, so you can see really cool detail without, you know, bringing out noise or having to use low level lighting. And if I can't shoot at the blue hour, if I'm shooting in the middle of the night and I'm not gonna, you know, I'm not gonna set up 5 hours early to get a blue hour shot and wait for the Milky Way to be where it's gonna be, I'll just take really, really long exposures, and if I have to, I'll stack really, really long exposures. and just use the ambient light that's there. And when I edit it, I just get creative when I edit it. So, you know, give that foreground a bit of definition and a bit of shape just in the editing process. There's no actual low level lighting or light painting whatsoever. And we've got one here from Mataj. I'm so sorry. So, oh, this is going to be a good one. Outside of Australia, which places or countries are on your bucket list or wish list for astrophotography? Wow, that's really hard. I think the first place my mind goes to is Mauna Kea in Hawaii. So I've done a lot of traveling in Hawaii, and that was one bucket list shot that when I was there, I never actually got to get. So it's just been a thorn in my side ever since. I just want that shot of being on the top of that volcano with a huge panorama over the observatories up there, above the clouds. Yeah, that's definitely a place that's on the bucket list. But apart from that, Northern Hemisphere, so Northern Europe, all the photos you guys get up there with the snow-capped crazy mountains, I just want to do it. There's just nothing like that here in Australia. We do obviously get snow, but you know, the snow's not above the tree line, so it's really messy. So the images you get in sort of that Northern Europe area are just incredible. So that's definitely a place that I would like to go and shoot. But you know, we'll see what happens. So thanks so much, guys, for all you guys that have dropped questions. Thanks so much. I hope I've given you a bit of an insight there. Any more questions, drop them down below. Jump over onto Insta. If you're not following me on Insta, jump over there, have a chat. I'm always up for a chat. If you're not subscribed to the channel, jump down, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on any future videos. And until next time, cheers, guys.